This meeting is being recorded.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this Brass Band Conductors Association virtual networking session. Tonight, we're very pleased to be welcoming Ian Porthouse to talk to us. We're recording this session, which will be available on the Brass Band England website as a member resource in the next week too. These sessions are held quarterly on topics relevant to conducting, and they're fairly informal, and we'll normally finish, we'll have a bit of general chat and discussion towards the end. You can ask your questions in the chat, and we'll just see where the conversation takes us. We have got some questions lined up for Ian in advance. So just to introduce our guest tonight, I'll just change the view. Okay, right, so Ian Porthouse is regarded as one of the brass band movement's leading conductors, educators, performers and teachers. He's the head of brass band studies at Birmingham Conservatoire, hails from a musical family in the heart of Cumbria, where he became principal cornet and a founder member of the Cumbria Youth Brass Band. At 16, he became leader of the National Youth Brass Band of Great Britain, and his outstanding talents saw him soon become principal cornet with Desford Colliery and Black Dyke. During this time, he also played with a number of the world's finest instrumentalists at iconic concert venues, including Carnegie Hall in New York, and as a featured soloist with Philip Smith, principal trumpet with the New York Philharmonic Orchestra. He's currently MD of the highly successful Tredegar Band, who notably performed at the BBC Proms in 2022 as part of an evening prom performing Gavin Higgins' Concerto Grosso for Orchestra and Brass Band with BBC Now, and exclusively at a special night brass prom. So I'm sure we'll get on to talk about proms as we go along. So I'm going to just start with putting some questions to Ian about how he started off on cornet. So Ian, what got you onto cornet and how did you end up getting into a brass band?
Thanks, Rosie, and hi everybody. Good evening. Nice to see you. I think there's a few of us recovering from the Brassing concert weekend. I know Rosie's probably been busier than all of the competitors, but it's really nice to see you. Thanks for joining. Yeah, I mean it was quite simple for me. My dad was a cornet player and still plays. He's about 84 now. Doesn't play competitively or anything like that, but so. Playing for me was a really natural thing to do. There was always instruments lying around the house. Really, his dad was a brass player as well, so that was it. Really, I was never putting any pressure to learn. It was there, and I did it. I enjoyed it. We were lucky that. When I was at school, if you wanted to learn an instrument or have lessons, it was all free. I guess that's another discussion we could have at some point as well, isn't it? But that's how I started really, and my dad taught me to play, and then I think I was 10 years old, joined Flimby Saxon Silver Band, they still exist. Unfortunately, I don't think they compete anymore. But that's Flimby's a little village in between Maryport and Workington. But that's where my dad he grew up, and we played in the band there with a brilliant conductor, Parker Wilkinson, who not only was he the conductor of the band, he was the treasurer and the secretary as well. So to say he was keen on the band is a massive understatement. So that's how I started to play, just with my dad.
And was anyone a particular inspiration?
Well, I better say my dad as well for that. he's a really, really good player. But obviously he had a good collection of LPs. So my listening go-tos were Jim Shepherd, who I know has been a guest on here before, Philip McCann. So this was the late 70s, early 80s. So Jim had finished at Black Dyke. Philip was there, but we had all the records. Derek Garside. And then I remember getting a double album of Harry Mortimer. One side was Harry playing, and the other side, the other record was him conducting. So old recordings of Jack McIntosh, and it wasn't so easy in those days, was it, to find recordings of players, but it is now, where you can just find everything in about 10 seconds. So, but the main people I listened to were Jim Shepherd and Philip McCann. Yeah, they were my big inspirations. And I guess then round about the same time, I think Rosie mentioned the Cumbria Youth Band was formed in 1977. So I was the bottom third cornet player. Then when I was 10, when I started with in the first course, first rehearsal with Cumbria Youth Band, and worked my way up, and I guess I would have been 13, 14, and we had a change of conductor, and that's when I first got in contact with Richard Evans. Richard became the regular conductor of Cumbria Youth Band. We used to meet once a month, and I ended up playing principal cornet. And my dad at the time asked Richard, "Look, we need to get Ian some professional lessons." We tried Jim Shepherd, but he couldn't fit me in. So Richard said, "Why don't you come down to see my principal cornet player, John Hudson, who was principal cornet at Leyland, who had been a student of Derek Garside's, actually." And John, he went on then to be principal cornet with Foden's, but then lived, I think John's been in Norway for probably 30 years now. So so I started taking lessons every other Friday. So I used to finish school. Dad used to be at the bottom of the school drive. In Workington, we used to jump in the car, drive down to Leyland, which is a couple of hours every Friday, have a 2-hour lesson, and then head off back up the motorway. So John Hudson was a big influence on me as a cornet player, as a young cornet player.
So because this is BBCA, you had a really good sort of career on cornet, but how did you get into conducting then?
So that actually came about through Flimby Band as well. So it was about, I think, 1993 or 4 when I was playing at Black Dyke, and my dad called one day and said, "We've got a bit of an issue. We've qualified for the national finals, but our conductor's ill. Would you be interested in taking the band?" And of course I said, "Well, I'd love to, but I've never conducted anything in my life before, other than maybe a few sectional rehearsals." So I said, "Well, I'll come and give it a go, see what you think, and I'll see how we get on." And so the very first thing I did with them before the contest was we worked on Gough Richards's Oceans, which I'm sure many of you will know it's a fine piece, but it's actually quite a tricky piece to conduct, even though it's regarded maybe as a slightly lower section piece. So that was a bit of a baptism of fire when I had to think about absolutely everything. And at the end of that project, I realized I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed obviously the musical part, but the interaction with the players as well. So, it wasn't a deliberate thing that I did to start conducting. It was a favor, I guess, but something that I'm very grateful for, because it gave me that first opportunity to see, firstly, if I could do it, and secondly, if I enjoyed it and if the players enjoyed it as well. So that's quite a long time ago now. Yeah.
So did you have any tuition whatsoever? Did you go on any conducting courses at any point in your life?
No. But I'm very, very, very lucky that from the age of 16, I only played for a really top class conductor. So I was sat literally 6 feet away from Richard Evans for 5 years. Then I had 5 or 6 years with James Watson at Desford and Black Dyke, then David King at Yorkshire Building Society, Alan Withington at Fairies. So every single rehearsal was a lesson for me, even if whether I was conscious of it or not. I knew what things worked as a conductor. I knew lots of things that didn't work, also from my experiences. So no, I've had no formal training as a conductor, not at that point anyway, and still I don't really have any formal training other than spending a lot of time with absolutely superb musicians, which is you can't really find that. It was just the situation I was in, and that's what happened. Yeah.
So what qualities do you think make a good conductor?
Oh my God. How long have we got? I mean, the first things are the practical things. You've got to know, we need to know repertoire. We need to know styles. We need to know a lot about actual brass technique. And I know a lot of our very good conductors were not necessarily all brass players. Peter Parks wasn't a brass player, and he was one of my absolute heroes as a conductor. But he was always working with very, very good players. Whereas we're not always working with Black Dyke or Tredegar or that other Welsh band that I'm not allowed to say their name, but the Corey band. There they go. It's in a lot of ways, conducting bands of that quality is it's easier and it's more difficult. We can go into that in a while, but you need to know how the physics of brass playing works to help those players. I always see it as conductors, we're directors of the music, but we're also our main job is we're managing a group of players who might have a big mixed ability. So that's something we have to do, and we have to have obviously a good sense of pulse, a good sense of pitch. And these are things that some people find easier than others, but they can all be developed like any technique in playing. Techniques in rhythm and pitch can be developed through practice. So that they're the sort of practical things I think we need as conductors. But then there's the sort of human element of it, player management or people management, which is I'd love to say. I wish we could send us. We could all go on a course to learn how to deal with people. Well, there's only one way to do that, and that's by doing it, isn't it? We run a conductors course, a postgraduate course at Birmingham Conservatoire, and I have to say, most of the time, in their one-to-one lessons, we end up talking about situations, not so much about looking at a score, which of course we do as well. But my students will normally come up to me and say, "I've got this situation at band. What do I do?" And it could be a situation where you've got a strong player in the wrong position. How do we get around that? All of these sort of human things that we have to deal with. How do we motivate players? If we've got a band who's maybe had a couple of bad results, what's the approach then to get them out of that? It could be a slightly, a tough time for the band. How do we do that? And then also sort of emotional awareness. If you're, again, I've seen some brilliant conductors work miracles with bands who end up playing better than their collective abilities. We've all been involved in performances like that where you say, well, how did that happen? But I've also seen the other side where if the conductor's sort of emotional awareness isn't quite sharp enough, that can be really demotivating for a group of players. I think the days of the old and it's the same in the orchestral profession, the bully boys techniques of conductors, that seems to have gone, thankfully now, and everything's a much more positive. But you've got to be aware that if somebody isn't playing very well, why are they not playing well? Is it because they're out of practice? Is it because something else is going on? Is it because they've over practiced? You've got to try and work out what's happening with those players, which goes back to that. You have to have a good knowledge of brass technique. Is there a fundamental problem there which you could help with? Because that's what we are. I see conductors, especially in brass bands, we're teaching on a big scale. And our brass band movement, we have a huge variety of abilities. From championship down to fourth section is it's a huge task.
So how do you pick up a band that's had a bad result in a contest, and then the next week you're back at band? What do you say?
Well, you've got to look at the positives, and I find that the best thing to do is totally focus on the music, not the situation. If you've had a bad result, and bands they tend to mope about things and think, oh, this is the end of the. I mean, Tredegar on a brass in concert, we thought we put on a good show. We ended up 6th, which is for us a bad result. But we had a concert the day before, the day after, or yesterday, and we obviously played the same music, and the whole band felt great after the concert just by playing music, and that's I think the thing that we should really focus on. I mean, our brass band world, we are so intent on competitions that we actually sometimes lose focus of why do we play our instruments. Well, surely it's because we enjoy playing them. We don't play our instruments to try and be the best band in Lancashire or Yorkshire or South Wales. We do sometimes, so many weeks of the year, that's what we do. But ultimately we play our instruments because we like music, and that's, I think, the conductor has to keep that at the forefront of what's happening. And normally when that happens and the music comes first and everybody's focused, that's when the good performances happen, and you could, normally that's when you're successful. But you can't win all the time, as we all know.
So if you were to pass on some tips to someone new starting out in conducting, or to your younger self just about to start, what might you say?
Two words really: listen and watch. So listen to what other conductors say, listen to the results as in musical results with the band, and watch what they do. Conducting it's amazing to watch so many different techniques. We've had the great pleasure at Tredegar to be working with Martin Brabbins recently. I mean, Martin is, I guess, in the top 5 British conductors of current generation, and he came to the band, and when we were working on the Vaughan Williams recording project, and the band sounded amazing. The main thing he did was he put the band at ease, because everybody was a little apprehensive about how this was going to work. But the first thing Martin did, he told us all about when he played euphonium in Toaster Studios band when he was a kid, and he could still remember what every member of the band did for a job. So immediately all of Tredegar band could relate to him. So he wasn't now Martin Brabbins, the conductor of the BBC Scottish Symphony Orchestra, or the newly appointed Malmo principal conductor. It was Martin Brabbins that used to play euphonium with Toaster Studios band. So that was, whether he did that deliberately, we don't know, but it had that effect. So you know that's the hardest thing, I think, for a young conductor. Again, the practical side of it is you've got to work out what your hands are doing, and at first we have to think about that. We do have to think about it, the same as when we're learning to play an instrument. We have to think first valve, second and third valve. After a while, our muscle memory takes over, and that's when you actually then start conducting, is when your arms are just relaying what's happening in your brain. But yeah, listen and watch others, good ones.
Very good. So we all know you went to the proms, which was an amazing achievement. How did that all come about?
It's made through one man, and we'll probably mention his name quite a few times in this call, and that's Gavin Higgins, the composer of the Concerto Grosso. So just a bit of background, because this wasn't something that happened over a couple of months. This relationship goes back probably 20 years. My relationship with Gavin. So Gavin was I first met Gavin when he was a tenor horn player with the National Youth Brass Band of Great Britain. I was a cornet tutor. Then Gavin came to study French horn. He transferred to French horn and studied at the Royal Northern College in Manchester. He studied composition and performance, and I think he was the first dual first study student to actually complete both and gain a first-class degree in performance and composition. So he's quite a talented chap, is Gavin. And I ran a brass ensemble at the time as well, and so Gavin was the French horn player in the group, and he arranged music for the group, and he was obviously doing his own compositions. So this was a relationship that started quite a long time ago. Gavin's obviously then went and he's worked his way up through through the orchestral world, while alongside writing pieces for Tredegar Band. We've commissioned 3 European test pieces from Gavin over 15 years now. That's over 2010 was our first commission, and Gavin then found himself as the composer in residence at the BBC National Orchestra of Wales. And from the start of that project, Gavin always said that he wanted this final big piece with the orchestra to be a brass band orchestra project, which met with a lot of resistance, I think, in the first place. That the orchestral management, their reaction was, why should we do this? So then Gavin, being the passionate bands person that he is, Gavin's from the Forest of Dean area, where there were many brass bands when he grew up, and there still are, thankfully, loads of bands in the Forest of Dean. And he just didn't give up. He kept saying, no, I'd like to write a piece for a brass band and symphony orchestra. So I think when he said he wanted to write a 40-minute Concerto Grosso, they really understood how passionate he was about that project. So that's how the main prom came around, is through Gavin's determination and persistence. And then the prom on the second day, I guess, was a spin-off from that, where the BBC wanted to show what brass bands can do on their own, as well as this new project with the orchestra. And that one was a late night prom. I think we started at 10:15 in the evening, and we didn't really know what to expect at all until we walked out into the hall, and it wasn't as packed as it was for the main prom the night before, but there was probably 4,000 people in there, and they absolutely loved it. It was probably the best musical experience I've ever had as a conductor or a player. I didn't conduct the Concerto Grosso. I can't take the credit for that. The conductor of the orchestra did that. So I sat in the band and tried to work my way through the cornet part for that one. But yeah, so Gavin Higgins has been a huge help to not just Tredegar Band, but to promoting brass bands in the wider musical world.
So what do you think we need to do to get a brass band on the proms every year?
I don't think we'll get a brass band on the proms every year.
Again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because there was a big gap, wasn't there? I think the previous prom before that was the National Youth brass band, did a project with the National Youth Orchestra, but that was a long time ago. I think what we have to do is keep showing the wider musical world what a brass band isn't. We get this stereotypical, hymn tunes and marches. Of course, we do those brilliantly, but we can also do many, many, many other things. I think if we approached the BBC and another band said, well, we want to do a similar thing to Tredegar, where the prom on our own, the program was sort of a history of brass band repertoire in and out, well, an hour and 15 minutes. So we started with some really old, well, we actually started with some Richard Strauss, so not brass band music, but older brass band music. Then we played some Vaughan Williams, and then worked our way through the repertoire and finished up with, some very light music that we would all probably play. I think we finished with MacArthur Park, and then there was an encore, which we ended up, I think, playing 3 times. They wouldn't, the audience wouldn't let the band finish. They were just going absolutely wild, and the BBC program had to finish. So we actually got cut off, but we were still going in the. So in my answer, to try and answer your question, I don't know, but we need to just keep throwing new music and new ideas at these people. I would love to say, that everything Tredegar has done has been a success. It hasn't. You've only heard about the successful things, obviously. There have been times remember we did a concert at the South Bank. It's more than 10 years ago, and the program, it was a huge program. There's Cloudcatcher Fells, Grimethorpe Aria, so a really, really serious program. And it was very poorly attended. So I guess we could say that was a failure. Was it a failure through advertising? We don't really know. But we can't give up. And maybe that's where those motivation skills come in to say, oh, come on, we've got to just keep going. Because, band audiences are, I guess, they're like orchestral audiences, that they do like to know some of the music that they're going to hear. Orchestral audiences go, if they want to go hear a Beethoven symphony or a Bruckner or a Mahler symphony, of course, that's what they want. But it's also nice for them to maybe have a new piece in the program as well that they didn't expect. And I think that's what brass bands need to keep chipping away at. And I know that it's difficult to if you're doing a regular concert in Dobcross Band Club and you decide to play a bit of Harrison Birchwhistle, it probably won't go down that well. You've got to pick your moments. So again, I don't know the answer.
No.
I can just tell you what how we've come about our opportunities.
Very good. So we've had a question from Katrina Marzella, who can't join the call, but she sent quite a complicated question. So I'm just going to read this out, and Ian's going to do his best to answer some of this. But Katrina, so those who might know, Katrina used to play baritone with Black Dyke and top bands, and she was conducting Aldbourne brass in concert this weekend, and with lots of work with various groups on the continent. So she's got in touch with us to say, Ian and Tredegar, you've done some incredible projects and collaborations. They've broken down barriers and pushed musical boundaries. It's been a joy to watch some of these. So she wants to ask, can you give us all a breakdown of such projects? If you had to teach someone how to do this, how would you explain it? How do they come about, evolve, connections, be financed, etc.? So I don't know if you want to tackle some of that.
Yeah, well, the answer, Rosie, is no, I can't. But I can tell you about how we came about our some of the projects. One of the other projects we did was we were involved in the film Pride, which was the story of the Lesbian and Gay Society in the miners' strike, raising money for miners in South Wales, which I didn't know anything about until obviously you Google it when we found out that this might be a possibility. And that literally happened. Our band secretary, it was the Thursday before the British Open 2013. I can remember this clearly because in 2013 we won the Open, so I can remember it clearly. And on the Thursday, I had a message from the band secretary to say, I've had a phone call from a film soundtrack composer who's interested in the band being involved in a film set in South Wales in the miners' strike. So there's obviously a brassed off theme going on there. We thought, okay, and he wants to come and hear the band at some point. Now I guess maybe quite a few bands we get calls like this now and again or an email, and normally nothing happens following that. But anyway, so we were rehearsing in the old conservatoire in Birmingham on the Friday night, and so Chris Nightingale, who was the composer who contacted us, said, "I'll come to the rehearsal the night before." So we weren't expecting him to turn up, but anyway, we got to rehearsal, and I'd sort of forgotten about this, and we started rehearsal, and then the band manager came up and said, "Ian, Chris Nightingale's in the foyer. Can he come in and listen to rehearsal?" So of course I'd never met Chris before, but those of you, if you don't know Chris, I'm sure you've all heard the music to Matilda, the musical. So Chris orchestrated all of Tim Minchin's songs from Matilda, the musical. So he's a really top class orchestrator. So we met Chris, and he listened to the piece, which was Arabian Nights, which was probably a really good piece if you've never really heard a brass band before, to hear that the night before a contest performance when it's hopefully sounding pretty good. And he stayed for the rehearsal, and then at the end he said, "Right, I'd like to book the band to be involved in the film," and that's how it happened. We were involved in a few ways. We were in the film, playing some marches at some of the demonstrations in Wales and in London, but the main involvement was on the soundtrack. So Chris wrote some original music for the film. So that's how that one came about. So it was just, I guess, Chris must have just Googled brass bands in Wales, and luckily ours must have maybe been the top of the first one that came up. It could have been as easy as that. It could quite easily have been Corey or Tom Winlice or City Cardiff, but we were the lucky ones that he contacted first. We've had other things. I don't know if you remember, in lockdown we did a project with Matt Lucas, the comedian. He did a song called "The Baked Potato." Baked Potato Saved My Life, I think was the thing, and that was the same. It was just an email to say, this production company are looking for a band to do this project, to multi-tracker recording. Would you be interested? Well, you say yes or no, and we said, yeah, let's give it a go, and that was it, really. That was it. It's just when an opportunity comes along, you either say yes or no. And in the brass band world, we don't get that many opportunities of real national exposure. So we've been, I guess, lucky to get those few breaks, and then of course you've got some contact to them. That's the well, it gets a bit easier then, doesn't it? And of course the product, or our band has to be good. That's the crux of the matter, is especially for the proms or something like that, we have to be capable of going and performing, especially with the orchestra at their level, and that and it worked out great. The finance part of it, as a conductor, I try and not get involved in any of that, because that's a massive distraction to what I'm doing. All I do is say, this is what I'd like to do. Can we do it? And the answer usually is yes or no. And if it's no, I can be quite stubborn and say, well, how can we make it happen? And I think that's what we have to be. We have to be ambitious as conductors, and try and, if something is not easy, that doesn't mean we give up and don't pursue it. I'm just trying to look at my notes, Rosie,
I
about
was
that.
wondering, have you got some projects that Tredegar or you have initiated yourself, rather than someone's come to you with
Yeah,
and you've had to get funding for it?
Yeah, I mean the main ones we've done is the recording projects. So obviously we've made our regular type concert type recordings, but in the past we one of Gavin's Higgins' other projects was the ballet, the Dark Arteries ballet, again about coal mining. But then when we wanted to record Gavin's music, that recording is an expensive business, so we looked for funding. We got a few smaller sponsors. Gavin was helpful. One of the other big supporters of brass bands in general is, I'm sure we've all heard of him, is Paul Hindmarsh. Paul was heavily involved in sourcing funding for the Vaughan Williams recording. So we're very fortunate to have done the Vaughan Williams recording last year or the year before, and then the Hulse recording this year, and finding funding for those projects is not easy, because
do you have a dedicated person, someone on your band committee or someone who can put in applications? Or
we do. We have the same person will put in applications for grants or funding applications, but we have a management team of around six people who all have a good input and some sensible heads there. You've probably heard, unfortunately, we lost our treasurer 2 weeks ago, John Bound, which was John was a massive help on, because he was an accountant himself. So John was a sort of mastermind of. He was the one who usually said no to me, but then found a way around it. So we've got a good team of people at Tredegar that all help, but we don't.
And are they players?
Sorry,
are they players as well, or
yeah,
you've got some people who just do this sort of thing?
No, they're all players. Yeah, yeah. So we
find the time to do it.
Yeah, it's a very, very tight knit outfit. I mean, I guess the band has changed a lot in the last 15 years. From they used to run with a very traditional committee run thing where the committee weren't players, which on paper is great, because it's the players have got enough to do really, but they're just the way things have developed. The players that we have also got lots of other skills as well as being good players. They're really good organisers. They're good. They've got good visions. I come up with the musical ideas, and then they find ways to try and make these things happen. But I would say that the recordings are the main self-promoted projects that we've done. That recordings that we know necessarily won't make the band any money. A CD of Gavin Higgins' Dark Arteries ballet music isn't going to sell that many copies when we're playing at a hall in Treorchy. We know that, but it's a musical, a satisfying musical project for the band, and it's for I assume all the people that are on this call now, you like brass band music, but you like serious brass band music as well, and that's what we're interested in doing as a musical group, as well as making CDs that will hopefully pay for the next CD.
So are you always on to the next initiative? Are you always sort of trying to think of what's our next big project, or you just...
I would love to say, yeah, we've got everything planned out for the next 3 years. It's not like that. It's like all bands, we have times where the treasurer will say, okay, we're fine for the next 18 months. Things are looking good. We've got some concert bookings in, and so at that point we can look at then doing a project that probably won't make us any money. But then there's other times when the treasurer says, okay, we're good for the next 6 months, but then we need 5 more concerts in the between March and the summer, which is fine. But then getting the diaries together, and because obviously I work with lots of other groups other than Tredegar, is it's tricky. So it's it's not something that we look too far ahead. A project like the Concerto Grosso, obviously that was in the planning for over 2 years. The Proms performance, even though it wasn't confirmed, probably until 4 months before. So we had to keep this date and not put in a prom. The proms are obviously always in the middle of the summer holidays. And for brass bands, for bands like Tredegar, that's the only time we have to have a little bit of time off, because the British Open is always the first weekend in September. So we traditionally start back we always start 3 weeks before the British Open. So the only time we can really have off is from the middle of July to the middle of August. So that was quite tricky there. So we try and look as far ahead as we can, but I'd love to say it was a perfectly run, planned thing, but it's not. Sometimes opportunities come along and you just have to take them quickly. We played at the Welsh International rugby match last weekend, just over a week ago, and that was quite a short notice thing. Not weeks, but it certainly wasn't in the and. The week before Brass in Concert, the weekend before, we would have been rehearsing. But obviously, a Welsh and international at the Principality Stadium, it pays quite well. So the conductor gets overruled when the treasurer says we can make quite a lot of money on that day. So that's what we're doing, because it's going to pay for Brass in Concert.
So it sounds like quite a lot of these initiatives, people have approached you, or it's sort of who you know is how you've ended up doing them. So Katrina asks, how would you initiate a collaboration? Have you decided yourselves you'd like to work with someone? Is that something you've done?
Yeah, well, we've been quite lucky that we have been approached. But I guess if you've got an idea and you need to know how to make it happen, you need to find a contact. I mean, the brilliant thing about the brass band world is that somebody will always know somebody. Because we have any band, if you ask what they all do for a living or what they're studying, it'll be hugely a diverse group of people. And somebody will know a contact somewhere. Somebody will have a contact somewhere. So maybe do all bands have a team that look at these things, or do they have one specific person? We certainly don't, but normally we'll have a discussion to say, well, we'd like to do, even like yesterday when we did our concert in Chesterley Street, we really needed a concert the day after Brass in Concert to try and offset a bit of the cost for 2 nights in a hotel and a coach for 3 days. So we all said, well, who do we know that who's involved in any of the bands up there? And then we said, well, one of our ex-cornet players, Philip Tate, he conducts Westo Band. So it was a case, basically, we'll give Philip a ring, say, would you be interested in doing a joint concert? And that's how that came about. And fortunately, they said yes, and they worked really hard, and we had a great concert yesterday. So, yeah.
Yeah, good. I hope that's answered some of Katrina's questions.
It doesn't really answer Katrina's questions, but
I'm sure she could get in touch with you direct.
Yeah, of course.
But, so I'll jump at something else. What has been your most awkward, terrifying, worrying moment as a conductor?
There's been none. It's all been.
Yeah.
No, that's a really easy one, actually, and it was at the Yorkshire area conducting, and I'm not going to put anybody in an awkward position here. I was conducting Hepworth Band on Salute to Youth, when Salute to Youth was the area piece. So I'm not sure when that was, 2008, but maybe somewhere around there. And I don't know, those of you who know that piece, the second movement starts with the solo horn player. And it starts with a syncopated rhythm on the same note. Bom, bom, bom. So we played the first movement, everything went really well. And I brought the solo horn player in, and the solo horn player had a bit of an air shot. So instead of being a syncopated rhythm, it ended up on the beat, which was fine because it's only me and the solo horn player, so nobody knows anything's wrong, other than the band have to come and on the beat. So I was then faced with a group of, I think there's 5 players come in just on a chord, all looking terrified, as to say, "Oh my word, what do we do?" So I basically stopped conducting and just gave a direct play now. And the remarks were, "Absolutely beautiful start to the second movement. You've come second and you've qualified for the finals." And it was one of those moments that, that I have to say that's probably in a competition environment that I've thought, this could actually go, this could be badly wrong. So that's that one. And my other one, it's a total other end of the spectrum. When we lived in Rochdale for quite a long time, and I taught it as peripatetic in all the schools, and we had the Rochdale Music Festival, and hopefully it's still a big music festival in the town hall, which we all know is a beautiful hall. And I was conducting one of my primary school bands, and all of the other teachers there. So many of you probably know Lee Rigg. Lee was a colleague of mine at Black Dyke and the Fairy. So Lee was there with some of his school bands and all of the other teachers. So I was conducting this primary school band on the floral dance, a Jock Mackenzie version of, so pretty basic version. So we started off probably that tempo, bum 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 bum, and this performance proceeded to get faster and faster and faster. It wasn't meant to, and at the end we just about finished together, and I turned around and all of these teachers just had tears streaming down their face. And then afterwards they also said, "We know exactly how that feels." So it doesn't matter how successful you are as a conductor. If a group of young players decide they're going to get on with it, you've got no control. You've got to go with it. So that was a serious one and a funny one. But there's been other things that have happened, I guess. But no, the Salute to Youth was my scariest moment. Yeah, definitely.
So what's been the highlight of your conducting career?
I'll probably have to give you a few. So I guess the most surreal one was at the proms on the major prom where we played with the orchestra. Obviously, I wasn't conducting, but from the start of the project, Gavin had said, after the big piece, the 40-minute piece, because this was the whole second half of the concert, he said, "I want the band to play something on their own, and I want you to conduct, and I want to arrange a Welsh melody, an arrangement of a Welsh tune." So he did an arrangement of Alana Moore, which is available now if anybody wants to buy it. Any bands want a beautiful arrangement of Alana Moore. So when the big piece finished, I then on stage quickly took my band uniform off, stuck a dinner jacket on, and got up onto the podium, which was 6 feet. It was a huge podium because the group was so big, and it had to be like the percussion were in the choir seats at the back, and just standing there in an absolutely packed Albert Hall, because unfortunately for our national contest now it's not full. It's a long way from full, but it was absolutely heaving. And we talk about imposter syndrome, where we, and I'm sure that's the most I've ever felt that, because just there's a full symphony orchestra, because they didn't go off stage, and the band, and we play this Alana Moore, So that was, I would probably say, the highlight of my profile, you know, as a brass band conductor. But as far as performances go, there's many performances, not all with Tredegar. I remember when the first section finals were at Harrogate, and the test piece was Victorian Snapshots on Radcliffe High with Ray Stedman Allen, and I was conducting a band called Pennine Brass at the time, and we drew last. So I think we'd rehearsed in Huddersfield at about 8 o'clock in the morning. Found out we were playing last, and I think we were on stage at about 11:30 at night. So it was quite a tough job to get the band wakened up, which it involved a little bit of fun and games backstage to get them all motivated. But then they went on to give even now I would say it was first section, but it was one of the best performances I've ever been involved with, and it won the contest. So that's a big memory. The British Open victories, obviously with Tredegar, are great memories, especially Arabian Nights. That was just one of those performances that, as conductors, I'm sure we all know, when a competition performance, we have markers throughout the piece where if we can get to the beginning to there safely, that's good. And then you get to the next point and the soprano player doesn't miss the tricky entry, and you know the dodgy tuning part is comfortable, and we worked it. And that was one of those performances that, not right until the end, because I don't know if any of you know that piece, but the soprano has an optional top E to finish, which is a bit of a joke, really. I mean, that's serious piccolo trumpet territory, and we got all the way and to the end, and then the soprano player he got the top E as well, and that just sort of finished the performance. And I think I actually jumped off the floor after when we finished, which I've no idea why I did it. It just happened. So I guess that was my sense of relief that a performance had gone as well as that. So yeah, they're probably my most fond memories as a conductor. Lots of playing ones as well, of course.
Very good. I'm going to invite people, if you want to take yourselves off mute, if anyone else would like to ask any questions, feel free.
I'm always happy to jump in with questions.
Go on.
Got a little list that I've made, but I'll ask a couple of sort of general ones. So, hi Ian, I'm Kathy. I conduct in the 4th section, but our band has just been promoted. So in January we'll be in the 3rd section, which we are very happy about. So at your level in the championship section, when you're doing something like Brass in Concert or any of your other jobs, but I'm thinking particularly of Brass in Concert because that's fresh in our memories, who chooses the theme and the program and sorts all of that other stuff and stuff, like where the players are going to stand and how do you do all of that or do you have how does that work at your section?
Well, the bags under my eyes might give you an idea who does that, but not always. Okay. We're lucky at Tredegar. We have quite a few members of the band are arrangers themselves. Mm-hmm. Ryan, our solo trombone player, and our ex bass trombone player Andy Austin. Andy did quite a few Brass in Concert sets for us, so it varies. Mm-hmm. Traditionally, I come up with the idea of what it could be. Not always. So the one we've just done, the Richard Evans tribute, was all my idea, and that came about really from the National Youth Brass Band Day that we did in the summer for mm-hmm. Richard. It wasn't the plan to do a Richard Evans tribute this year. We had quite a few other ideas, but we did this day for Richard with the youth band, and they had lots of films and photographs, and we obviously chose music that was related to Richard. So that one came together really, really easily. But the background stuff, as you say, all of the bands, when it comes to brass in concert, it looks great on the stage, doesn't it? All the lighting's brilliant. Everybody hopefully moves around, doesn't knock too many stands over or anything like that. But I don't know. You maybe know or you don't. Usually, 6 weeks before brass in concert, all of the bands get sent a link to a Google Drive folder, in which we have to put. This is where I spent most of the last month in front of this computer. Every moment of everybody's performance is written down in that Google Drive folder. So there's a lighting plan where you have to go through every piece to say, at this point in the piece, we want the lights to go up 30%, and then we want them to go back down, but we want them to go from red to blue, and we want moving lights. There's all the spotlights, of which I think all the bands got in trouble because we didn't stick to the spotlight markers. I don't know if you could see on the stage. There's little bits of tape, but we didn't worry about those. But apparently the lighting guys weren't very very impressed with us. But there's not a lot they can do once we start. And all of the the program details, we have to have all the copyrights. If you're using a video, have you got permission? If you're using images, have you got permissions for all of those things? So there's a huge amount of work goes into that, and then obviously putting those multimedias together. I mean, we had 3 people on Saturday doing the multimedia for us. All of which could read scores because they have to do it. It's a very alive thing, for the changes of images or on the lighting, because they just instruct the lighting people what's happening at every moment in that. So it's a the day after when we did our concert, we still had the multimedia, but we didn't have the lighting and we didn't have to worry about. It was sort of really easy and very simple, but I guess that's why brass in concert looks so good, because there's so much planning goes into it. But as far as the musical elements, Kathy, it's mainly me who will come up with those ideas, but then I'll suggest something, and then and it's not necessarily it's not a management member. It could be a member of the band will just say, "Oh, what about this piece? Have you heard this?" And there's somebody just sent me a little WhatsApp link to a YouTube video or a recording, and it's really a collaborative thing. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So have you got an entertainment program coming up or?
No, we did one a few weeks ago. We played at Witchaven.
Oh yeah.
We like doing that one. So we did. That's a 20-minute. Do whatever you like.
I was there at Witchaven. Yeah. Not all day, but I was there. Yeah.
No, yeah. So yes, we did very well. We were happy with that.
Did you win?
We didn't win, but winning's not everything. But we did come third, and so we're very happy with that. And we did win one of the best baritones prizes in one of the sections, and we did win most entertaining band. So yes, we won that.
Wow, well done. Because that's another. We could do another Zoom on what is entertainment, couldn't we?
Yes. Well, the people that I was with on Saturday were wondering as well, because of course you have all the different adjudicators at brass in concert, and they're all looking at different things and marking different things. And is there a point at which you've almost got to choose whether are you going for the entertainment presentation one, or are you going for the best new thing, or is there an element of choice, or do you just try and pitch it at everything?
I think for brass, if you try and pitch it at everything, you'll end up not even going to the contest. At the end of the day, I mean, obviously our program was very much music based. We didn't have any costumes or anything, and to be honest, I would never ask any of my players to dress up in costumes, because I know what the answer would be.
Yeah.
Unless it was a really, really good costume, of course. But so we knew that we needed a bit of luck with the entertainment element. Now, as with all, it's so subjective, isn't it? If you put 2 different judges, because I think we were 9s and 10s in entertainment, but overall we were 3rd in playing, and we knew that was possibly a risk. But when we chose the program, the band, it wasn't a case of this is what we're playing. It's always I get feedback from the band, and they just loved it from the start. Even we had a comment from, I won't tell you who it was, but it was somebody connected with the competition, that they questioned whether we were actually going to play Blaze Away. They thought it was a joke.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and we said, no, we're going to play it, and we're going to play it really well.
Yes.
And I think it was received brilliantly.
It was. Yeah.
And that's the risk you take. Of course, it's not as visually impressive as other things, and other things that Tredegar have done. I mean, Leanne's just sat over the other side of the table here. We spent about a month. I don't know if you can remember. We had a puppet show one year. We had two. In fact, unfortunately, John, who recently passed away, he was one of the tap dancing puppets in the banjo playing puppets. We spent about 4 weeks making this contraption in our front room, and anybody who came in said, "What are you doing?" But, we try all different things, and I guess this is where lots of some great ideas come from, and it's a brilliant day for the audience, isn't it? And
it is
massively varied.
Yeah,
it's got to be the best show there is, and all performed to a rehearsed to the infinite level. The bands they're not going to get it any better than what you see at Brass in Concert.
Yeah. And then what sort of things do your adjudication say at that level? Because they're presumably not saying that was a little bit sharp, that wasn't quite together. I
actually haven't read them yet.
No. In general, at championship level, though, are they more positive, or is there more? It's pretty good quality, is what I'm saying, isn't it?
Yeah,
they're not probably saying, "Oh, that entry wasn't quite together." Or
well, but believe it or not, they are.
Oh, they are. Okay.
I always say, even at the very, very top level, if you play really together and really in tune, and the soloists don't make many mistakes, you're probably going to win. And that's that. It's when it comes down to it, and we assume at the top level it's more to do with interpretation and all of this. Of course, that's a big part of it, but obvious mistakes are very, very easy targets for adjudicators, and that's so. In answer to that question, Kathy, they're probably very similar to what you get with your band. Okay. Whereas in the British Open, you might get a couple of mentions of slight intonation here and there. In the third section, it's more prevalent, isn't it? We know that's the case, but it's the same. It's the same thing. If the hard luck soprano still comes up in the top section.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much for answering those questions. Very nice to speak to you.
And you.
Would anyone else like to ask anything?
I would have a question.
Go ahead.
Practical one, Ian. What I implemented in my band, just second division in Germany, is to send. We have very limited rehearsal time, so we rehearse every third week for a day. So what I implemented is to send around notes for all the music we play that carries information like additional markings or bars that I need for rehearsal, or tempos, or missing dynamics, or additional ones or so.
Yeah.
Which I never learned anywhere. Is this something which is also usual in British brass bands, as you have a lot of projects in a very short time, or is it something you wouldn't do because?
I think you've answered your own question there, Barnabas. You're getting together for a, I guess, intensive session, but not very often. So a lot of those things that you've said, the tempo here will be at this, the dynamics here, even though it doesn't say let's do this, it's going to save you time, and you must have very, very diligent players that look at all of these things before the rehearsal. I think with regular bands in the UK who are rehearsing 2 times every week, it's different because and I think it's different, not always in a good way, because I always say that a rehearsal is not the same as practice. The players, if we know, of course, if we give some new music out, then it's everybody's sight reading. A good friend of mine is, and I'm sure you've all played his music, Tom Devoren, a composer. Now Tom works in the States now, and his rehearsals with these college bands, he has to do a rehearsal plan that they all see, and it will say bar 1 to bar 54, we will rehearse this section for 15 minutes. Then the next section could be a different, so that's more like possibly the way you have to work. But that's the American university system. That's how they do it. Tom found this very difficult at first, but he's seen some benefits from it. And I guess it's when you're working with different levels of bands. I mean, I've done it where I get one of the biggest questions I get from conductors of maybe lower section bands is that they, at the end of rehearsal, something's sounding really good and fix lots of problems, and then the next rehearsal, it's gone back again. So the rehearsals are a repetition of the previous one. Well, that's then a retention problem that the players have to change the systems. They have to mark things, to retain all of these things. But I guess that your system, Barnabas, is definitely in the UK would be quite unusual. Okay. And I can see you're probably quite busy anyway with a young baby.
Yeah, that's a night's preparation. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Very good. Any more questions? Rita, go on.
Good evening to you. Good afternoon to me. Thanks, BBCA, for this opportunity.
You're just a bit quiet. So I don't know if you can turn yourself up at all. Yeah.
I'll try to speak louder. Does that work?
That's okay. I've got you, okay. Rita.
Good. Good to see you again, Ian. It's been quite a few years since we've been at Tredegar for the rehearsals. My band is in the second section, and this is going to be, we're planning in next spring to go back to NABA, the North American Brass Band Championships. Last time we were there was 2019, so COVID punched a big hole, and then because Canada came out of lockdown so much later, with that we've had a huge changeover in personnel.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out how to plan, how to get people engaged from the fact that there's a difference between, or what I perceive potentially is a difference between a concert performance mode and a competition mode from a mental approach and mental training approach to it. I don't know if you have any insight on that at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, I ideally, I want the same mental approach for a competition as a concert. That's assuming that the concert is absolutely top class. But I know exactly what you mean. I mean, we tend to we put so much pressure on ourselves for competition, don't we? Especially even in the fourth section in the UK, the best of those bands normally play is in the competition, and it's really easy to see why. It's because they rehearse more often, and those players are individually playing better, and then collectively it's more together, it's more in tune, and the sounds are usually better when they've played more often. But I remember working with Whitburn Band probably 15 years ago, no, maybe 12 years ago, and we had a sports psychologist came and spoke to the band about, because that was the time when what's the cycling coach, Dave Brailsford. It was a British cycling coach, and they were talking about small gains, 1% here, 2% there. Collectively, it all adds up, and then really got into the psychology of basically why are we nervous? Why do we get nervous? And how can we not be nervous? Is that the real question that you're
Well,
thinking?
the thing is, we all have our level of nerves, and because we concertize a band member, we know how to deal with our nerves in a concert.
Yeah.
Once every 6 years to do a competition creates a second level of nerves for a lot of people. They'll freak out because, and especially in our society where we don't have the competition bug as much as the British bands have it. Like I want to make it comfortable for them and not to freak out because all of a sudden they're concertizing in a competition. Yeah. So I'm just looking for insights on how to bridge that gap.
Yeah, I think it should be maybe just the main thing is to bring those two things together and bring the competition sort of psyche towards the concert element. So that, I mean, the performance is no different.
Right.
The only difference is somebody is sitting at the back of the room and they're going to tell you whether they like it or they don't. And what control do we have over that? We have no control at all. One of my colleagues and good friends is Roger Webster. And Roger obviously does Roger is a doctorate in performance psychology, and his basic rule is he practices and he'll play, and if the audience like it, that's great, and if they don't like it, you can't do anything about that. That's just what he obviously played amazingly on Saturday at Brass in Concert and won the solo prize. So the judges definitely liked it. The fact that he's the best cornet player that's been around for the last 30 years probably does help. But my advice, Kathy, would be to just try and bring those. Sorry, Rita. We're on Rita now, not Kathy. To bring that element closer together. And the best way to do that is really focus on the music, not the situation. Yeah. That's the, and it, one of my mentors, James Watson, he always used to say, if you've got time to feel nervous, you're not invested in the music. Well, that's not right. If your nerves affect your performance, you're not invested in the music. We can't get rid of the butterflies and that sort of stuff, and nor should we, because that is completely natural. What we can do is try and offset the effects of those things. So that obviously adrenaline, it's a great thing. It makes everything work faster. But when you're trying to play a very soft, slow melody, when your heart's going faster than it needs to be, you have to find a way to trick your body into thinking you're not in that situation. So the answer to that is some breathing exercises before you play. I always used to do just before I would play. I mean, when anybody says conducting is difficult and you get nervous, I always say, no, it's not like playing. Not like playing at all. Conducting, Richard Evans used to say, can you hear all those split notes? No, you can't. It's obviously not quite as easy as that, but breathing exercises, just setting a slow pulse and breathing in and out slowly, so that immediately your brain thinks you're resting, because that's a problem. Is our heart rate just goes up, so that we breathe more, we get more oxygen, so our heart can go even faster, and then you're in a whole world of doom, for brass playing. But my best advice, I guess, would be to focus totally on the music and what you're doing as a group, not the audience. And I'm not saying blank them out. Of course, they're a big part of what we're trying to do, but don't let the situation affect what you're doing as a group. Alain Vizzuti, one of the greatest trumpet players in the world, his tutor books, in every one of his books, he uses the phrase "stay in real time." Mm-hmm. That's what it's about. In the moment, when you have to play that high C, you concentrate on the high C. You don't concentrate on if I miss the high C, because the chances are that you probably will miss it then. It's being really proactive in being involved in the performance, not the situation.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Very good advice. Any more questions? No. Okay, then. Well, we'll just I'll move on to a few little adverts, but I would like to thank Ian for a really interesting, enlightening conversation and telling us all about how you've got on in your life. It's been very inspirational. So I'll just share my screen. So I normally do a few little adverts. So I just wanted to tell you, update you on who our reps are. Those of you who are members, I don't know if you realise we've got a group of regional representatives. So if you're in one of these areas, we can put you in touch with your rep who can help you with finding mentors or just someone to network with who lives a bit nearer to you. So we've got Alan Dogood in London and Southern Counties. We've got a new exec member, Colin O'Shea, who's looking after the Midlands, and he is now our mentoring coordinator. So if you do get in touch with us for mentoring or you've already been in touch, he is going to reach out to everyone and make sure that your mentoring happens and you get what you're looking for. So we've got Matt on the call. He's looking after the Northwest. We used to have one big region called the North, and now we've split it down because that's a bit too big. So we've got Jack Capstaff looking after Yorkshire and North East. We've got Stuart Black in Scotland, Brendan Breslin in Ireland, and we are looking for people to fill the vacancies in the Southwest and Wales. I don't know, Ian, if you know anyone.
I'll bully somebody into it.
Yes, they need to become members and then immediately they will become the rep. Yep. Right, so this tonight is one of our virtual networking sessions. So we've had several of these and we've got a whole set of recordings that if you're a member, you can get on the Brass Banding on website and go to member resources and you can watch any of these sessions you missed. This is just a sample of some of the ones we've had. But there's plenty. You just go on and search for conducting and it will bring up everything we've got. So that's a really good resource. So these sessions are quarterly. So we're just working on the next session is going to be probably at the end of January. So we're going to be looking at some of the area test pieces. So last year we had a really good session with Christopher Bond and Alan Fernie talking about the third and fourth section pieces. So we're trying to do that again. So this year we've had confirmation from Andrea Price, who's the composer of the fourth section piece. She's lined up. She's happy to talk about her piece. It's not how to win. It's background and inspiration and what's going on in the piece, which will be enlightening. And then I'm reaching out to, hopefully we'll get the third section composer. If he's not available, I'll try some of the other sections, but that's going to be our next session. And then we'd like to keep in touch with us. If you've any suggestions for topics for us to cover on these sessions, just get in touch with me and follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram. And if you're not a member, we'd like you to join. So I'll stop sharing. And just thank you all for joining. And as my conductor would always say, the rest of the night's your own. So thanks very much. Thanks, Ian. That's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Say goodbye.
Thanks very much.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.